There was some good, some bad, and definitely a couple bang your head against the wall moments. But what really matters is that this staff got to see their team in action so they can take the next step forward. The tough part about opening a new era on the road in the Big Ten is having to start off with a loss, but the lessons in that loss could lead to some unexpected wins in the future. If you watched my game reaction, you know I had just as many questions as you, but I woke up with just as much hope and excitement for the rest of this year as I had before. So today, we'll talk about the top performers, the biggest questions we need answered, and the 5 things we learned about this team after week 1. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my Colorado game preview this week. And if you're still supporting this team during their rebuild, hit the like button and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
Thompson winds up, goes deep, got a man, touchdown!
The other night, I had a very passionate live reaction to the game, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page and you didn't leave there with the mindset that this team's the same mess it has been in the past and that there's no hope for improvement. Rules had a few summer scrimmages to learn about his guys and how to use them effectively, and the reality is, you only get better from experience. Neither of these coordinators have any Big Ten experience. Rules never coached a team full of transfers, and his first test was against a head coach who's had years to refine that system and their culture. I'm not forgiving that loss because they know as well as we do that it should have been a win, but Nebraska fans wanted a new identity, and this is step 1 to getting that. The goal is still to win 6 games, and they had to go through what they did on Thursday to know what the emphasis and practice has to be going forward. The other night, Casey Thompson posted a black screen on his Instagram story right after the Minnesota game, and I'm sure he was trying to send a message since he felt like he should have been given the starting job this year, and I don't blame him for feeling how he does, but the fact is, he's not the right QB for this offense. They want their quarterback to run the ball. Jeff's great at that. The offensive line has some issues, and Casey struggled behind him way too much last season. Trey Palmer's gone, and there are a couple reliable targets, but the receiving room's not strong enough to save Casey for getting stuck in the pocket when there aren't any options. I'd bet he'd get injured again this season, and even if he did make it through, his upside isn't high enough to keep him in as the starter. Sims has some flaws as a passer, but he's an elite runner who can be coached and put in position to make better decisions. There's no way he can throw 3 picks every week and expect to win, but now that Satterfield has some film to work with, I'm sure they can tighten up and he's going to look better against Colorado. There were a few guys who stood out to me, but let's talk about the 3 who I thought played the best and got me the most pumped up. First was Omar Brown. He made 4 or 5 big plays that I saw, but one was on a 3rd and 9 when Crooms was open over the middle, and he hit him as the ball came in and knocked it free to force a field goal attempt. The next was the red zone interception in the 3rd quarter when Kaliak Manis had momentum and was driving to take the lead. Daniel Jackson beat him to the outside by just a step, but Brown took the perfect angle and laid out to make a game-changing play when the defense needed it the most. Last year, he failed to establish himself after a great season at Northern Iowa, but he tackled really well and looked like a brand new player compared to what we saw last year. Next is Marcus Washington. Rules sat him in the first half because of issues with grades, but as soon as he came out in the second, he started making plays. Outside of the 15-yard pass to Alex Bullock, Sims couldn't find anybody open downfield. Halfway through the 3rd, Washington beat the corner inside and had his first catch for 17 yards. And a few drives later, he caught a couple more and one went for 14. He didn't have a crazy stat line, but the pass game was non-existent before Washington got in the game. And last is Deshaun Singleton, who played a little last season, but mostly on special teams. He finished 2nd in tackles behind Omar Brown, but he looked like the hardest hitter on the D. There was a play when the receiver ran a comeback and got absolutely crushed by Newsome and Singleton. And in that moment, it felt like every time I heard a big hit, number 8 was responsible for it. Rule told us that he was going to be a playmaker, and it just so happened that he did it in the very first game. I make a lot of content and I put it out for free, so I want to give a quick shout out to CarrackerChronicles.com for sponsoring today's show. And for those who don't know, Adam Carracker launched his website just a few weeks back, and there you can find all the content he's featured in all in one place. You can also find my videos, Corn Nation, and other Nebraska football content on the site, so if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure you check it out. Now let's get into the 5 things we learned about this team. And I know there were a lot more than 5, but these were my most important takeaways. Number 1 is that special teams will be special. Rule said they're not going to treat these units like an afterthought, meaning starters are going to be in and they're going to return kicks. But who would have guessed that the first points came after a huge Ramir Johnson kick return that set the offense up at the 35? I have no idea what the percentage is, but it seems like every time we see big returns in college football, the energy shifts and points come pretty quick. And remember when I told you Buschini averaged 44 yards a punt last year and that he downed 14 inside the 20? Well, on Thursday, he averaged almost 48 yards per punt and he downed 3 inside the 20. It's only one game, but the special teams units came out strong. Number 2 is that the defense is the strength, and you didn't even have to watch the game to come to that conclusion. Just look at the stat line. It's not very often that you turn the ball over 4 times and still hold your opponent to only 13 points. The offense wants to run the ball, and they did it well at times, but red zone struggles carried over from last year. Sims was only 57% for 114 yards through the air, and the left side of the O-line broke down bad at the worst time. I've seen a lot of comparisons to 2021 in terms of the drastic difference between the two sides of the ball, and after one game, it could be true. There are multiple NFL caliber players on this defense. Hutmaker, Gunnarsson, and Lenhart all looked great as tacklers, and the inside backers helped to shut down what's always been a good run game. If the offense cuts back on turnovers, this D is going to present some serious problems and consistently hold teams to under 14 points a game. Number 3 is that the passing game is questionable. And I mentioned that Sims only hit 57% of his passes and had the 3 picks, but I think there are 3 issues here that we can all agree on. First is that Sims was staring down his receivers, giving the DBs a clear indication of where he was going with the ball. Second is that Sims was throwing it off his back foot, and whether that was because he was trying to get it out before getting hit or because he was anxious, I'm not sure. And third is that the receivers struggle to create separation and get open. If the receivers can't get open, those are dangerous throws. Marcus Washington and Alex Bullock had a couple plays where they had room and made big catches, but outside of those few plays, throwing downfield wasn't really an option. Number 4 is that the offense will get creative. Early on, Heinrich Harburg lined up at tight end and caught a drag over the middle for a 10-yard gain. Minnesota knew he was the backup QB and probably had to think twice about what role he'd have on that play. True freshman Jalen Lloyd came in and he ran an end around for a first down. But the biggest surprise was the throwback from Grant to Sims to Bullock to open up the second half. If a traditional pass game isn't an option and the O-line isn't strong enough to power run it all day, I'd expect more creativity from this staff to find ways to get playmakers in position to pick up big yards. And last is that this team is tough, and I'm talking mentally and physically. I know it's easy to complain about the fumble and the blown coverage on Daniel Jackson on 4th and 10, but they showed resilience. The offense failed to score from the 1-yard line going into the half, and they responded with a touchdown on the first play of the half. Sims couldn't find any receivers, but he kept firing, and he finally found a spark with Marcus Washington. The defense was constantly getting the ball back, but they didn't let the lack of scores ruin their mentality. They played at an extremely high level the entire game, and they only broke down on a few plays. Physically, they matched the typical Minnesota energy. The running backs started to run straight into the second level. The defense wasn't missing tackles like we're used to seeing, and I heard a bunch of pad pops. This staff's already showing that they're going to match the physicality in this conference, and I love it. Now for my 5 biggest questions that I hope we get answered in these next couple weeks, because some of what we thought we'd get based on the presser notes didn't end up happening. Number 1, what's going to happen at left tackle? The O-line looked good at times, but there were 3 sacks off the left side and a missed block that got Gabe Ervin popped at the line before he broke off that 27-yard run. Teddy Prohaska's been solid when he's healthy, but will he be ready to give it a go soon, or are they going to have to test out Gunnar Gatula? Number 2, where were the stars? Billy Kemp didn't get any action outside the punt return. Thomas Fidone was on the field a lot, but no plays went his way. And Gabe Ervin, who looked as good as we've been told he was going to be, barely got any touches. My guess is that Minnesota took those options away, but is Satterfield going to find a new way to get those guys the ball against Colorado? Number 3, will the fullback play a bigger role? I saw the fullbacks in for about 10 plays, but they didn't have any catches, and I can't remember if they had any crucial lead blocks. I think they'd be an effective piece on the left side to help with the run game, but I'm not sure if they're a key piece going forward or if this staff has different ideas now. Number 4, who's the leader at running back? Ramir and Gabe played the most snaps, but Anthony Grant had the most carries. Grant's a stud and a big play threat, but how's that fumble going to affect his role? And number 5, will Tony White find a better way to generate a pass rush? For a while, it felt like Kaliak Manis had 20 minutes in the pocket, and it was rare to see anybody get in the backfield. Bullock and Nash both made big plays at the end, but it took time to wear out the Minnesota line. Are there some new blitzes we see this week to get after Shador, or is the secondary going to be in a tough spot again, running around all day while these receivers just look for a spot to get open? I'm hopeful after this first game that the staff takes the film and improves on both sides of the ball. And although I think the defense is the clear strength of this team, I know the offense can score with a strong run game between Sims and whoever else they give the ball to. Turnovers are extremely costly, and if they can just fix that one area alone, this team's going to be able to win more than 6 games. It's just a question of how quickly can they fix that turnover issue. I made a video about my thoughts on Colorado's win yesterday, so if you haven't had a chance to watch that yet, you can get my thoughts on them there, and I'll be back on Tuesday with my game preview and prediction for this week to give you my full analysis. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. What was your biggest takeaway from week 1? Which of the new starters are you most impressed with? And will the game 1 to game 2 growth be enough for us to see a win? I think adjustments are coming. I just hope there's a solution to the turnovers because those are the backbreakers. But that's all I got for today, so thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.